I'm gonna be honest with you guys. Tahiti looks great! I understand now why Dutch kept ranting and raving about it to Arthur. It's a beautiful island with a culture that is a vibrant blend of Polynesian heritage and French influence, where ancient traditions meet modern life. I mean, wow. Who wouldn't want to experience that? So I put on my best outfit, grabbed my passport, and hopped on the first flight out to Tahiti, ecstatic about all the memories I'm about to make. Oh! Oh my god! Oh, sweet Mary and Joseph! Okay, enough of that intro. Today we're soloing Peak, but instead of putting this on tenderfoot and speedrunning the whole thing like a loser, I actually want to make this a challenge. So instead, we'll be on Ascent 4, which removes flares from the Peak as well as carrying over all previous modifiers, such as increased fall damage, increased hunger rate, and increased item weight. So after surviving that harrowing crash, I reset my dislocated limbs, grab my backpack, fill it with supplies, take one last look at a waste of hard-earned vacation time, and mentally prepare myself for the next 2 grueling hours of scaling to the Peak alone. And we're off. I've only just taken a few steps and I can already feel the scoliosis developing from all the weight I'm carrying, but it's hard to think about my deformed spine with a view like this. If I wasn't going to starve to death, I would have spent a few days basking in that warm Caribbean water, but I'm already feeling peckish, so it's time to get moving. My first meal while marooned was a coconut. How on theme. I slog that bitch down and then try not to shit my fucking pants from all the coconut water I just ingested when I reached the first leg of my long and egregious journey. This is the moment where my soft little baby hands begin their transformation into 60 grit sandpaper over the course of multiple days. But that is a sacrifice I'm being forced to make. Now the climbing itself isn't that difficult. It's managing the weight along the way. And that begins to settle in very early for me after scaling 2 pretty normal sized walls and nearly going into cardiac arrest in the process. So I do some much needed reevaluating of my wares. I probably don't need a fucking 40-pound cannon in my backpack, but I've already grown emotionally attached to most of my items, including my trumpet I was going to learn while in Tahiti. I think it's safe to say I've got some work to do. So after much careful thought, I decide to get rid of absolutely nothing. This may be early signs of hoarder syndrome, but I'll just have to endure the small cracking noise that I keep hearing out the base of my neck until I'm ready to part ways with my items. The rest of the time on the shore was actually a breeze. I scaled a few dodgy cliffs and my hands looked like a blue-collar worker's by the time I got near the top, but we managed to get it done with minimal challenge. I am a bit disgusted by the thought of fueling what was basically the most grueling back workout of my entire life with a single marshmallow on a stick, but beggars can't be choosers, only complainers. That was when I felt the humid air coat my sweaty visage and peering ahead revealed the culprit. I was so eager to put myself through another vicious cycle of skinning the palms of my hands that I didn't notice I had eaten the stick as well. So I had to wash down the bark with a nice drink and replace it with a first aid kit. My first thought upon closer inspection of the next obstacle was, is that fucking lava? And my second thought was questioning how this entire ecosystem hadn't burned to the ground from the 1000-degree magma. I was so puzzled by this scientific anomaly that I began stress eating whatever the fuck I could get my hands on. A few easy climbs had my path crossed with one of the lava falls. I believe my frolicking through the jungle and swinging from the vines has awakened some Neolithic genes, because like our great ancestors, I too am curious what the bright hot thingy will do to me the closer I get, which was apparently nothing, aside from vaporizing the eyebrows clean off my face. Then my intrusive thoughts told me I should throw myself into that lava. I know what you're probably thinking. I'm kind of retarded. And you would be correct. While continuing on my pilgrimage, I come across a beehive, and if I'm being completely honest, I didn't really know what it would do for me, but I knew I wanted to touch it. Unfortunately, a bee's defense mechanism is to inject small amounts of poison into your body via tiny stingers when they feel threatened, and I suppose me evicting them from their home would warrant such a response. However, persistence is both my blessing and my curse, so I light my extra flare that I'm carrying, hoping to gas them out of their abode with chemically infused smoke like some deranged beekeeper, and to my utter surprise, it did nothing. So I switched to the next best thing. Ow, 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 ow. Now that most of my body had the texture of bubble wrap, I decided to spend the rest of the night soaking in the rain underneath this rock like I'm in an early 2000s R&B music video. Then I spent 10 minutes trying to climb a cliff that I could have done in 30 seconds had I not been cursed with the sin of greed. All this nature watching and questionable philosophical hypotheses sure works up an appetite. I really wish I didn't fucking eat all that food from earlier in one sitting, because now I am putting something classified as chubby in my mouth, which not only upsets my stomach, but also my psyche. A few more hours of being pissed on by the sky and unibombed by a poison bush, I had finally made it to the top, and could say with confidence I now know what it is like to live in the Darien Gap. But with that memorable experience now being something of the past, it was time to feast. I stoked the flames of what was quickly becoming my earthly Bible, and as I did my best to enjoy my grub, I felt this sweltering heat assault my back from the next area. I instantaneously get swamp ass from seeing those rocks dancing in the distance, and my hope melts away along with my skin. Traveling through the mesa is what I imagine it's like living in Arizona. There's not much to look at, and the heat feels like someone's taking a giant magnifying glass and aiming the sun over my entire body. As I'm taking in my surroundings, I am suddenly and forcefully abducted by a tornado and violently thrashed around like the wife of an NFL linebacker with too much CTE. I'm not sure what kind of blood magic is at work here that I don't feel any pain, but I'd like to think it's just my nerve endings still in shock from all the poison I ingested the previous day. I also thought this small oasis was a symptom of my brain hemorrhaging, but it turned out to be very real and very cute. I spend the next few minutes dodging the +11 UV rays that are causing the skin on my arms to bubble when I come across this very suspicious looking piece of luggage. Now, I've seen this odd shape before in some piece of old media, and I have a brief understanding that I should not get near this thing. But I've never been one to turn down a small hole, and it won't be today. I drop my backpack just in case, and immediately upon stepping in, I am greeted with a fucking heart attack. I didn't think I would say this, but I am starting to miss the jungle. I reach this canyon gap and figure it's time to finally put this cannon to use. Only I find another one in this luggage, meaning I never even needed to bring the one I've had with me from the start. Also, I realized there was really no good place to set up the cannon, and I discovered a rock formation that bridged across the gap anyway. I'm pretty sure after realizing that all the conflict I had put myself under due to the weight of this cannon was for nothing, I began to experience emotional numbing. The next portion of the climb, I mostly spent hiding from the sun and making cacti look like dick and balls, which was honestly the best way to pass the time. But my Gen Z brain kept reminding me I don't like being patient, so I had numerous close calls of shriveling to a pile of ash from the heat. I locate an interesting tunnel system that I'm eager to explore, but once I get in there, I'm quickly faced with numerous avenues of progress. Overstimulated by the abundance of choice, I start running around different hallways like I'm frantically looking for my girlfriend while lost in a Sephora when I'm greeted by the sun again. I was really starting to enjoy having to wait hours for night to roll around before I made any real progress. But that would be the least of my worries the moment I came across this ledge. See, after spending the morning boiling alive and being molested by a cactus, I spotted this strange looking mine shaft that I wanted to explore, and the only feasible way of reaching it was from this ledge. So I dropped my backpack to take off some weight and climbed pretty awkwardly to a spot that didn't really get me anywhere, but I marked it as my checkpoint with this piton. Now, the problem here, dear viewer, is that I did not take into account how hard it was going to be to climb back up, which quickly sunk in the moment I let go of that piton and realized I did not have the energy to make it back. Then images of my life as a quadriplegic began rapidly flashing through my mind. I had no choice but to either accept my fate or use my last bit of energy to jump for the ledge, which I obviously chose, impaling myself on the cactus and just barely saving my life. Thankfully, the adrenaline of nearly falling 100 feet to my death countered the pain of having dozens of sharp needles lodged in my skin. I was actually so shaken by that experience, I used my rope launcher to make the climb back safer, but it still almost resulted in immediate death. I think this was the moment that I really started grasping the gravity of my situation. At least I managed to get to the mine, which had a suitcase full of yummy treats and TNT. Numerous days passed of battling the local wildlife and nearly being atomized by dynamite before I saw any signs of hope. And by the grace of pure human willpower, I made it to my refuge. I have never been so relieved at the sight of another marshmallow on a stick, and you couldn't catch me having to endure another 15 minutes of avoiding third-degree burn. What the f***? Now, if you have a working pair of eyes, it wouldn't be hard to see why I'm not exactly thrilled to be here. Honestly, there isn't much to say about this place. It's hot. There's fucking lava everywhere. I'm sweating my Johnson off, and every time I want to cross to another rock, the soles of my shoes get fused to my feet. In a positive light, I'd like to consider every one of these places a memorable excursion I might have taken while on my vacation. In a negative light, I have suffered extreme irreversible physical damage that will make life a living hell for me once I return home. But who's thinking about that when I've just reached the final resting place of my journey that happened to be located at the base of a fucking volcano? Now, I imagine walking up to this final obstacle invokes a similar feeling to this photo. The gargantuan figure looms ahead in a mass of crude stone and jagged rocks, instilling fear in the hearts of many, but absent in this one. I light the final flame and enjoy my last marshmallow of the trip, stick and all, before I brave the toughest climb yet of my travels. The kiln. Its heat a war upon my taut skin, this fiery pit would be the ultimate test of adversity and will, with the only absolution being up. I scanned the formation for the least difficult path and set my course due north. It is honestly impressive how I am still alive with all these burns I've accumulated across the last week. I'm pretty sure at this point I'm more scar tissue and bone than man, and my backpack is genuinely a part of my skin. But with the end in sight, this was nothing more than another headache in a path full of migraines. However, I was making solid progress, hitting a couple of hurdles along the way, but nothing that truly made my legs quiver. And halfway up, I found a fucking massive lollipop, which reinvigorated my hope. I had a backpack full of resources, and the only physical damage inflicted was something I dealt with the last 72 hours. So if I'm being honest, the fear was beginning to wane. I did have a moment where I thought I was going to burn to death because I was too weak to climb, but the heat tickling my ass was enough motivation to push me over. I took a brief break to stuff my face with thick mints and gulp sports drinks like I was being sponsored when I found myself in this tight crevasse. So you might look at this thing and think, well, where the fuck are you going to go? And believe me, I was thinking the same thing. But after devouring the last of my food to take off some weight and using my hulking muscles to slam a piton into this wall, I dragged my shriveled body upwards and felt the light of the sun just barely pooling into this hellish chimney. The path was clear now. The weight I had carried for the entirety of my pilgrimage had been greatly reduced, and I could finally stand up straight for the first time in over a week. So with this newfound body and spirit, I climbed and climbed until I mounted the head of the beast and could feel the gusts of wind pass me by. I tore my backpack from my skin and tossed it into the flaming maw like it was the ring of Sauron, then instantly regretted it after remembering that it was the only backpack I owned. So I whipped out my bugle to give it a proper military funeral. My pockets stuffed with the last of my essentials, I made my way towards that glistening light, and after many painful days, I finally stepped foot onto the peak. The soft bounty of flowers danced around my charred fingers, tangoing with my ripped shins and ragged feet. There was something ethereal about this place, and I ran up that hill of flowers till I was greeted by the extraction point. With the last bit of my strength, I struck that match and played till my lungs could no longer hold breath, my rescuers fading into view like angels from above. I decided to reward myself with this massive lollipop, and with my added 4 inches of calloused skin, grabbed onto that rope, hoisting myself high on what was the true final climb of my journey.